Okay, we need to use PHP in order to connect to our databases. Okay, and if you remember, we have access to two web servers at the moment. One of them is on our own machines inside XAMPP, the Apache web server. We know that inside that we can actually create databases. The other web server is MySQL02 or MySQL03, and in there we know we cannot create databases. Okay, we can just create tables, fields, records, and so on. So one thing to be careful about is inside MySQL02 or 03, we might have a database table that is already, the name is already being used for a database table that we want to create. So we just need to keep that in mind. Okay, but just bear in mind, we can connect to two servers at the moment. So essentially we need connection code for that. Okay, so let's look at the resources. Let's just double check first of all. Okay, I have got my server running, and if we go into PHP MyAdmin, for the purposes of this example, I am assuming that there is a bookshop database created in XAMPP. So if you haven't got that created already, you should do so now. So let's look at the resources. Okay, so the first resource I want to talk about is index.php. And essentially, in order to connect our PHP web pages to the database, remember they're both going to be on the same server. They're both going to be on either XAMPP or your website and your database are both going to be on MySQL02 or MySQL03. Okay, so because of that, the relative location of both, they're both local to each other. Essentially, they're both on localhost. So our connection code consists of, first of all, it has to be inside PHP bracket. Okay, it consists of 4 pieces of information embedded inside 3 ordinary PHP variables. Okay, and then those 3 PHP variables are inside the PHP object. So let's go through the code. So here is the first of these 4 pieces of information, the relationship between the database and the actual website. Okay, they're local to each other, they're on the same web server, so we just write localhost in there. Okay, so MySQL host is localhost. What's the name of the database? Okay, as you saw just a few minutes ago, I have a database called Bookshop. Okay, this is only inside XAMPP now. Remember, if you are hosting your website, your DB name is going to be your D number. Okay, as will be your username, but I'll talk about that later on. In XAMPP, the username, we're just going to set it to root, and the password, we are going to leave it blank. Okay, and the reason for that is that this is the default configuration in XAMPP. So if we go into XAMPP, I'll just show you where this is. We see inside XAMPP there's a folder called PHP MyAdmin, and if we scroll down through there, we'll see a folder called config.inc.php, and inside that we have these 2 lines here. Okay, so CFG servers, square bracket I, square bracket user, that's set to root. Okay, so the user's name is root and the password is empty there. Okay, so you can go in and change this if you want, but there's no real reason to, because this is XAMPP is just really a test area for us to build sites before we host them. Okay, so we've got these 4 pieces of information. Okay, the host, database name, the username, and the password. Now, username and password, I'm spelling these a little bit differently. Why? Because these are variables which are quite likely to be used, say, on a sign up or sign in form on a web page. So the chances are you may use $username $password proper spellings as variables when dealing with that code. So I'm deliberately going to misspell them here in the hope that those spellings will not match when I'm using them as variables later on. Okay, so the 4 pieces of information are embedded inside these 3 variables. Okay, so $DSN is just the name of it, data server name, or database server name rather, it's just an abbreviation. Okay, that's got 2 of these pieces of information. And then what we're going to do is we're going to embed these 3 PHP variables into essentially a PHP object. Okay, you're used to objects from C#. Okay, so this is a PHP data object. So this is the syntax. We need new PDO, and then you just basically embed them all together inside the brackets like that. Okay, so all being well, that's going to happen. Okay, so the assumption here is, remember how try and catch works, is if everything is okay with our connection, we are going to create our PHP data object. And we are going to use this PHP data object in order to select, insert, update, and delete in our SQL database later on. This line, I'm just putting it in for the purpose of the example. Normally you wouldn't put that in. You don't tell the user the connection with the database is okay. You tell the user if there's a problem normally. So the catch part is if there's a problem with the connection, we are going to output the error message in the H1. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so let's look at the code. Essentially, if everything is okay, we are just going to get this H1 appearing. And what I'm also doing here is I'm using the pre-tag to display the PHP connection code just on the web page. Ampersand LT semicolon, that is one of the HTML special character. It's just a way of showing a tag bracket on the page rather than that being treated as a H1 tag. So let's run this and see what happens. And of course we get this because we are running it from the client side. So let's run it from the server side. Like that. Okay, so our connection code is okay. We're getting the message out. Now, if we have a problem with our connection code, and the chances are you will, because A, you haven't done this before, and B, you might be trying to connect when you haven't got the server switched on and so on. So where's the error going to happen? It's going to happen in one of 4 places. So let's just work through these one by one. Okay, if I make a spelling mistake here and come back here, we get an error message like that. Okay, no such host is known. Okay, so that's the message we get here. So I want you to make these mistakes. Okay, so you'll recognize them. And if you recognize them, then you'll be able to deal with them. Okay, let's make a spelling mistake on the database. Unknown database box shop. Okay, fairly straightforward message. Notice these error messages have a code associated with them. And let's just put it back that everything's okay there, and let's make our 3rd mistake. Okay, change the username. And there we go. Access denied for user rot. Back to normal. And then finally, let's stick in a password where we shouldn't be. Okay, so I'm using a password where I shouldn't be using a password based on config.php.inc. Okay, so this is our connection code, and let's look back at the other resources. Okay, I've got the connection code commented in great detail here, and there's the exercise that I just went through. I've also got the connection code just in shorthand there if you want to keep that. This code here is set up if you want to connect to the database, okay, in Net2FTP. You'll have your D number there, your username will be the same as the DB name, and then the password from the root at MySQL02 or MySQL03. Okay, exact same connection code otherwise. What else have we got? Yeah, okay, the errors are there from incorrect connection code. This can be very, very useful. Okay, let's suppose you are working away on your website and you're going to be testing it out on XAMPP, probably because it's easier to make changes to your code. You don't have to zip them and then upload them onto Net2FTP. So it's easier to make your code changes in XAMPP. So essentially, what have I done here? I've got the same try-catch code, but in here I've got my 3 lines there, DSN, username, password, and I've got them down here again. Okay, so at the moment, if the server was to run this code, it would assign McGinP, I'm not telling you, etc., to these 3 variables, but then it would overwrite them here. Okay, so the second group here is the set of values that will be used in the connection code. Okay, so this is overwritten here. So what I would say to you is use this code from here. This will allow you to work away easily in XAMPP, and then when you're happy enough that your website is working, you can then just swap the order of these, okay, so that the Net2FTP is after XAMPP, and then the Net2FTP connection code will work, and then you can zip your folder and upload into Net2FTP.